So many people just don't have a good importing system, and this leads to poor file organization down the line. Today, I'm going to show you how you can take images from your SD card and import them into ON1 Photo RAW and organize them in a way that you can find the images later. So let's go. So here we are inside of ON1 Photo RAW, and the very first thing that you want to do is obviously put your SD card into the computer. I can tell that my SD card is being read because if I come over here to browse, I'll just minimize all these hard drives. This thing that says untitled is my SD card. All right, that's how I know that the computer is reading the SD card. We're ready to go. After you have your SD card in, the next step is very simple. You'll come up to File, and once File opens up, my computer takes a little bit of time for File to open. But once File does open up like so, then you can come down to Import from Device. Now notice I have a keyboard shortcut here. I do recommend using the keyboard shortcut, which is on a Mac, Option I. On a PC, that's probably Alt-I. I don't know exactly what it is. If you do know, leave it in the comment section down below. We're going to go ahead and click Import from Device. And then ON1 is going to open up the import module. Now, this module can be very intimidating, and we're going to go step by step to make sure that it's simple for you to understand how to use, and then you can tailor the import module to fit your needs for the way that you want to categorize your files and organize your files. But I do recommend that you follow along with most of the core of what I'm teaching, because that's what's going to help you find your images in the long run, no matter what it is. Now, while ON1 is gathering all the information from the SD card, I want to talk about one of the things that I see a lot of people doing, and I just highly recommend against it. And that is separating all your images by date. That is the worst way that I have ever seen to categorize images. It sounds like it makes perfect sense, but in reality, unless you're really good at memorizing dates and remembering everything that happened on a particular date, this is the worst method of categorizing or organizing your images. And bottom line, your metadata inside of your image already has the date. As long as you set the date properly in your camera, when you capture the image, the date is going to save to that file. So if you really want to search by the date, then you can absolutely do that. But I digress. I just don't think that this is the best method. You let me know what your thoughts are about saving files in folders listed by dates down below. Okay, so ON1 has opened up the import module, and I'm going to go through this very slowly, so bear with me, but I think by the end of this video, you will have a very, very good grasp of how to use the import module to begin your image organization workflow. First things first, you have your source, and this is the SD card. Mine is labeled untitled just because I haven't given it a name, and it's really irrelevant for me because I keep up with my SD cards. Then you have eject when done, which is just a function. I never really want ON1 to eject it. I'll take care of ejecting my SD card later, but maybe you would like to do that. So you can check that bubble, and then it'll be good to go. And then I have don't import duplicates. This is really important if you are reusing an SD card and you're not clearing it off every time that you import your images. That's perfectly fine. You'll get a little squiggly line, and I'm not sure, or you'll get a little icon, not a squiggly line. I'm not sure if I have any images on this SD card. No, it doesn't look like I do. I don't have any images that I've previously imported into ON1, but I'll put a little screenshot here on the screen now, so that way you can see what that icon looks like, because if you see that, then that means that you've already imported it. So why would you need to import it again? So I do enjoy keeping this bubble checked for me. Then over here, you have check all, check none. I'm not going to really go into that. And then I have 660 images on this SD card. Now, I personally don't want all of these images, so I'm going to go ahead and click check none. Now, if you, for whatever reason, only have the images that you want to import on the SD card, then you can absolutely do that. But I want to select the images that I really want to import, and then we'll talk through some of the other aspects. All right, so I'm going to leave that alone. And then what I'm going to do is come down here, and this is my recommendation. you should always choose the images that you want to import before you come over here to the far right side. And in fact, I'm just going to minimize all of this so that way it's not distracting. All right, we'll go through each of those modules. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here. And today I'm actually going to be importing images from my daughter's 13th birthday. All right. We're celebrating her 13th birthday, and I need to get these images off my SD card so I can edit a few of them and then send them out to friends and family, because that's just what I do. The first image that I took is obviously right here. I'm going to go ahead and click that image, and then I'm going to drag this scroll wheel all the way down until I get to the end of the images that I took, which are right here. I'm going to hold Shift and then click. All right, that's going to select all of the images. Now what I need to do is on any one of these images, I'm just going to check the little bubble. All right, that's going to select all of my images. And then if you look up here, I have 409 images selected out of the 60 images that are on my SD card. So now it's time for me to tell ON1 what I want it to do with these images from my SD card. All right. And the first one is the destination. So where do I want ON1 to save these images? Now, for me, I actually have a folder that's for all of my family pictures, and this counts as family photos. So what I'm going to do is click here and see if it's in my recent folders. Now, if it's not, then I'll show you how to navigate to it, which is probably what I'm going to have to do. So in my recent locations, looks like I have just a few folders that I don't really need. And then down here are my cataloged folders. Now, if you are saving directly to a catalog folder and then you're making subfolders in there, this is probably the best place for you to find the folders that you need to put your images into. But that's not going to matter for me today. So this means I need to search for the folder that I want to put these in. So I'm going to click choose, and then this is going to bring up my Explorer window. And then all I have to do is come over here, and I know that it's on the FWP drive, which stands for Free Will Photos, but your hard drive will be named whatever you name it. And then I know the folder that I'm looking for is inside of personal work. This is where I put all of my personal work. All right. And this is how I keep up with everything that I do. All right. Because if it's personal work, then I know that it's going to be inside of this folder somewhere. And then I'm going to title this Jaden's 13th B-Day, whatever you want to title the folder. But what I recommend, and this is where the beginning of your organization starts. Notice that I didn't put a date. I put the title of the event of the images. Because if someone says, hey, you know, do you have any photos from Jaden's birthday? I can go and look for all of her 13th birthday images. All right. And I know that it's going to be inside of this folder. Super easy. Now, I wouldn't worry so much about a secondary folder. If you want a secondary folder, you could do that. I'm not going to go into these because I think that that's more complicated than the average user is going to want inside of ON1. All right. So now we're going to come down to rename. Notice that I have rename turned off. You can turn it on for your use if you want to. And I do rename my files when I'm working on client work. But for my personal work, I don't rename the files. I don't think that there's a need for me to rename. The file name is not that important. As long as it's unique enough that ON1 can distinguish each image by itself, that's all that really matters, because I'm going to rename the image when I export it after I've done all of my editing. So I don't think that you need to rename it. But for those of you who would like to rename, I will go through this module. So I'm going to turn it on, and you have a few options. All right. Here is where I can type in the name. So let's say, you know, this is, if I could spell my daughter's name, and it's her 13th. So maybe we'll do something like that, right? Jaden's 13th B-Day. Now, for those of you who have to have the date inside of the file, I recommend that if you rename your photos, you do it this way. You go with event name, and then you can do dash or underscore, whichever one you want to do. And then there was a space in there, so I deleted the space. And then you can change or put in a token, which again, the token is going to read the metadata off of your image and put that date into your image title. So you can see this is put in 2025, February 10th, right? That's where this information is pulling that, or it's pulling that information from the metadata on the file, and then it's putting it into the name. So you're probably wondering, well, Chris, how did you get that? Glad you asked. It's easy. You come down here to where it says add token, and don't worry so much about what a token is. All right. Instead, just know that underneath add token, you have these little options for ON1 to kind of go pull information for you. Now, I know that I want the date, so I can come over here to date and time, and I can select what format I want it in, and it's going to go and pull that information. Maybe I only care about having the year, so I can click on year, and then it's going to add in the year. And let me just put an underscore in here so you can see what's happening. So here, it's just putting a 2-digit year. Maybe I want a 4-digit year. So I'm going to change that to 4-digit. And then you can see it's changing the file name from Jaden's 13th birthday, 2025, February 10th to Jaden's birthday, 2025 underscore 2025-00, all that stuff. All right. But I don't really want that. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Now, to delete a token, you want to click in the space after the token, and then you delete it like you're deleting text. So you just hit the backspace or delete key on your keyboard, whatever you have, and then it will remove it. So if you want to put the date, this is the way that I would recommend putting the date into the title of your images, not into the folder that's holding your images. All right. I can't stress that enough. It's almost like a pet peeve of mine because I have not met a person who remembers dates that well. Now, if you're one of those people, let me know in the comment section, and, kudos to you, but I digress. Then what you have is inside of the model section. This is my camera model. It's not a actual model themselves, but again, I can come to metadata, camera, and then if I'm photographing with multiple cameras, this is one of those times, again, when I'm photographing for a client or an event and I'm using my EOS R6 as well as my Sony A9 II or my A7R4, whatever I'm using, right? I want to be able to distinguish those images a little bit better. So I do add in the camera model, and that's kind of what you're seeing here, because this rename was actually from an event. If you notice, there was a title ahead of here. I was shooting a military ball. And so I put the name of the ball, underscore or dash the date, and then dash the model because I was using my A7R4 and my Sony A9 II. Now, there are a ton of tokens in here, and I encourage you to go and explore whatever you find that is helpful, especially when you get to the metadata of the file. There's so much information in here, but on the import, the metadata is really only good for the camera information because there's not much IPTC information unless you're adding that yourself, which we'll get into. All right, so let me go ahead and get rid of the rename. So the next step is metadata. Now, I recommend that you use metadata. I can't stress this enough, at least the first portion of the metadata. So let me just minimize that bottom portion, right? Because it can get a little wild, right? You want to put the author information. I'm Chris Scott. I want my photos to have that tag from the beginning, all right, of the ingestion of my images to my hard drive. I want those images to be labeled with my name. And then I also want to make sure that I have my copyright, which is just all rights reserved, because I reserve all the rights to my images. And this is one of those things that I recommend that you do, because when you export, that information's already baked into your images. So then your files, as long as you check add metadata when you export your images from ON1, it's going to bake that into your files. So that's just a layer of protection. I know that there's a lot of digital right issues and stuff like that, but I can't stress enough at least doing the bare minimum. Okay. Now, the next portion is probably the most important part of being able to recall your images, and that is adding keywords. I just don't see enough people using keywords, and I don't know why. You don't have to get like crazy and write a paragraph of keywords. Like you can see from my last import, I only put a few keywords, but these are things that were going to help me remember. Like if I thought like, okay, I know I went and shot some birds and I'm not quite sure where it was. Well, I can just type in bird in the keyword or filter my keywords, my hard drive by keywords. And, this helps me with recalling images later. I highly recommend that you do this. And it's okay if all of the images weren't of birds, because I did shoot some landscapes while I was out there. And I get it. When I type in bird for the keyword, I'm going to get some of the landscapes that I shot, but that's okay because it was a part of the trip and it at least gets me in the ballpark. All right. It's better than having nothing in this field. So what I'm going to do is title or change these keywords, obviously, because my daughter's birthday is not that. So first one, I'm going to start with birthday. I'm going to put party. I'm going to put kids. I'm going to put my daughter's name, and then I'm going to put indoors. And notice I'm just putting a comma after each one of these keywords, and I can put multiple things. So I can type in like these were all shot with natural light. These were birthday gifts, or at least some of the images have birthday gifts in them. And I could go on and on, but for the sake of the purpose, I'm not going to worry about it. Although I will put 13th birthday. All right. I need to make sure that I put keywords that, like, when I think of these photos, 15 years down the line, what am I going to think of? Well, I'm probably going to think birthday, party, kids, and putting their names in there. Those are the things that I'm going to think of. So when I go searching for the images, I'll be able to find them. All right. Now, the next portion here is enable keyword AI. Now, I leave this disabled because I enable it on the back end. I don't need it during import. The keywords that I choose for myself work perfectly fine. But if you were to enable it, and I'm not going to click it right now because it does slow down my computer. Now, that's, issue that I have. Some people's computers, it works perfectly fine during import. But for me, it slows down my computer, so I don't enable it. And I just use the AI keyword on the back end. But the keywords that I'm adding here are the ones that are going to help me find my images later down the line. So that's the reason why I'm not worried about using the keyword AI, even though it is pretty good. If you want to get like super crazy with metadata, you can absolutely do this. You can hit this little drop down chevron, and I'm going to actually get rid of this description because this description does not work for these photos. Now, I don't always type in a description. I only type in a description if there's something that happened that I need to remember that I know I'm going to forget. This is a perfect place to put notes to describe it. But for the sake of showcasing how this could work, I'm going to type in Jaden's, can't even spell my own daughter's name, Jaden's birthday party at home with family. I shot this using natural light. Okay, there. Do I really need to know that I shot this with natural light? Probably not. But, you can add notes in here and whatever you want to do. All right. You can go crazy or you can leave it blank. Completely up to you. And then if you are using anything that requires GPS, or if you want to put more comments in here, then you can do this down here. Now, the rest of this is really up to you as far as if you even care to add this. So I add creator, which is me. I put my email address and my website. Again, all of this gets baked into the images when I export. So that's the reason why I like doing this at the beginning. Now, I don't need these headlines to be in here, or at least I don't need Government Island to be in there. Instead, I need Jaden 13th birthday party. That's what I want for my headline. And then this will make sense when I get to export, because what I have done is I've set up a token during export to take this headline information and add that as the title, and then put underscore and then the sequence number of the number of images that I'm exporting. So let's say I want to export 20 images because there's only 20 images that I care to get out of this. It'll say Jaden's 13th birthday party _01, and for the first image, or 00 for the first image. And then for the second image, Jaden's 13th birthday _01. So it makes unique names, and I don't have to type that in. When I export my images, all I do is I click export because I use presets. That's going to be for a different video, but I start here because if you begin with the import and you go all the way through managing your files, it's going to be so much easier for you to recall images and keep them organized. So when you get to things like exporting, you don't have to worry about if you have a title for the images or think about it, because you're doing it right here. All right. Now that's kind of more of an advanced thing. You don't have to do that, but it is what I do. Now, the rest of this information down here, like image and status, not as important unless you really need that stuff, but most people don't. Then we have the copyright. And again, I just type out the usage terms of all rights reserved, and then I put my email, or I'm sorry, my URL to my website. Now, we're going to go ahead and minimize the add metadata. I want to make sure that that's checked on. The next thing is photo settings. Now, this is a great place. If you have a custom preset that you want to apply to all the images as soon as you import them, you can turn this on, and then you can click down here and look at all your presets. They pop up. So, if I wanted to add in one of like my FWP basics. Now, here's the downside. You don't get a preview. Like if I click this, I don't get a preview of what that's going to look like on these images. So if it doesn't work the way that I want it to, and I don't know, I guess it didn't actually select that one. So let's go choose. We'll come up here to this black and white one. Yeah, there we go. So it actually put that one in there. It didn't put the FWP basics in there for some reason. Nonetheless, if you decide to do this, just know that it's going to impact all of the images that you selected over here, because you're telling ON1, take these images, put them into this folder, rename them like this, add the metadata that I'm telling you that I want you to add this preset to all of my images. Now, this could be extremely helpful if you want to edit fast and you have a preset that's going to get you where you want to be. But I personally don't think that I need this, and I haven't found the best use for it. I have used it in the past, but I don't recommend it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because I don't need it for what I'm doing. Okay. So now that I have the photo settings turned off, what I'm going to do is come over to the last module here, which is edit capture date. Now, for those of you who did not get your camera date set properly, like in your actual camera when you were taking these images, this is a great place for you to edit all of those images with the correct date and time and all that. Now, for me, I set my camera with the date and time accurately in the camera, and all I really do, because I don't really care about the time as much. That's important if you're shooting like bracketed images or something that is specific to a time. If, you're photographing an event and the time really does matter of when photos are taken, then sure, you definitely want to make sure that that time is accurate in camera. But for most people, all you need is the date. And as long as it's accurate, this is what that token is going to feed off of when it starts to build the names or folders or whatever you decide to do with that token. This is where that information is coming from. So if it is incorrect, then you definitely want to turn this on and then come down here and figure out, like, set the creation date, or, you can choose whichever one of these is the actual item you need to do. Now, the bottom portion is where the correction is going to be. You have original, which is what's on the camera. All right. You can't change that. However, if I were to set, let's go with set specific date time, down here where it says corrected, this is where the change can take place, or where I can make the change. And then of course I can go to adjusted time, and then using different time blocks here. So let's go -6. So you can see it's now subtracting 6 hours from the original time. Again, I don't recommend it. I don't ever find any use for me personally, but if you didn't set the date and time right in your camera, then maybe this is one of those things that you want to do. So I'm going to turn that off and minimize it. Okay. So now once you have everything set up the way that you need it to go, I recommend that you make presets, all right? Especially if, like for me, I'm always saving images to my personal work and then family folder. So what I'm going to do is come over here to this little drop down icon here. And I believe they started doing these in the 2024 version of ON1, maybe 2023. Don't quote me on that. But if you're on the latest version, 2025, you'll have this option. If you click this little drop down here, you get a few options. Now you can see I have one for family pictures already. I didn't use the preset because I wanted to show you how to build the preset. So I'm going to actually build a new preset here, but I have a few import presets and this just expedites it. So I don't have to set this every single time. I just maybe need to tweak a few things, right? So I'm going to click on Save New Preset. And when I click that, I get a little dialog box here, and I'm going to call this FWP Family Photos. All right. Just something like, you can name this whatever you want, as long as it makes sense to you. I'm going to hit save. So now every time that I photograph anything for the family, and I know that I want it to go into my FWP drive and then family photos, then that's where that goes. The only thing that I would recommend, which I didn't do with the previous ones because I was only working off of one hard drive, if you are saving to multiple hard drives or working through multiple hard drives, I recommend that you put the hard drive name and then the folder, like the root folder that all of your images are going to be put into. All right. And that is this right here. So for me, I'm on the FWP photo drive. And then I have the family folder. Inside of that folder, I'm telling ON1, I want you to create a folder that says Jaden's 13th B-Day. And just to make it make more sense, we'll just spell out birthday. Okay. So now every time that I create, let's say I go and photograph my kids playing soccer and I want to put those into this exact same root folder. The next time I just need to come up here, change where it says Jaden's 13th birthday to soccer game, Jaden's soccer game, whatever, right? And then it's going to create a folder in here that says Jaden's soccer game. And then I just need to come down to the metadata and change the keywords and the description and then the headline. All right. That's all that I would need to do. It goes really, really fast. And then I can hit import. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import, and then we'll come back when all of the images have made it into ON1's catalog. All right, so you can see that ON1 is loading all of the images into the catalog, but really it's not going into a catalog. It's going into the folder that we created. So you can see I have my FWP photo drive, and then inside of that, minimize this because we don't need that. Inside of that drive, I have another folder called personal work. And then inside of that folder, I have a folder called family. And then inside of that, I'm creating the folder of Jaden's 13th birthday. And that's where all of these images are going. Now, if you look in the bottom right corner, you'll see the status bar, and that's explaining or showcasing or illustrating, if you will, where we are in the process of getting all of the images selected, those 409 images, into ON1's or into the folder, and then ultimately showing the previews here in ON1. Now, as this is loading, I want you to kind of think through how this is helpful, right? Because over here, I've explained this structure, and this is actually really easy for me to find. So if I'm looking for pictures of my family, all I need to do is come to the folder that says family, and then I'm likely going to find the images I'm looking for inside of one of these folders over here. Now, because I used keywords, I can go up here to the text and I can type in any of these keywords, but also down here at the bottom, this doesn't get used that much, but there's a whole keyword list, and I can search this keyword list for any of those keywords that I put into my images. So when it comes to recalling photos later down the line, this is by far one of the easiest ways of being able to do that. And you can see I have a very long list here because I got a lot of keywords, right? And I work through, and I do personally keyword a ton of my images. And that all starts with the importing process. Now, yes, you can keyword images later down the line, and you know, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But I personally don't care to do it that way. I like to do it during the import. And then you can see all of the other information that's showing up over here on the far right side of what's being imported into ON1 during, or I'm sorry, added to my files during the import process. So there you have the import module explained, and I hope I went in enough detail for those who are really curious about how to get their photos organized. And hopefully I made the case for not filing your images by the date. It's just not that important to the overall image as much as you think it is. It's only important at the time that you're taking the image because you're living in that day, unless that date is the actual event. But even still, I would recommend naming the event, whatever the event is, and then using the metadata date. But again, I digress. I just really see a lot of people struggling with relocating images years down the line because they didn't set up their file structure for success to begin with, right? And it all starts with importing, and you can do it all using ON1 Photo RAW, just as I demonstrated. So if you want to learn how to develop a workflow, especially if organizing your photos is one of the things that you struggle with, then consider signing up for a training call with me. And I'll walk you through a workflow that's going to help you build a structure that's going to get you what you want and what you desire so you can find images later down the line. If that's something you're interested in, check the description box below. I have a link for you. You can sign up for a class today, and I would love to help you get organized. After you have your images in ON1, you need to go through them. That's called culling. Check out the video that's popping up on screen now if you want to learn how to cull your images so you can always keep the best shots. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.